What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Press X podcast. Today, we are going to be ranking our top 10 GameCube games. We will go over the rules for this ranking, but we've done quite a few of them at this point, ranging from the Wii, the PlayStation 2, all the way up into 360 Wii U times. But today, we are ranking the GameCube games. So the way that these ranking lists is going to work is there's a couple rules to follow, which are the game had to originally release on the GameCube. And we're not quite there yet. Eventually, we're going to hit a point where there's like arcade games and stuff to consider. But
especially arcade games in like Japan, and they get ported over.
We're not quite there yet, so we don't have to worry about that too much. But it had to originally launch on this. And then on top of that, you can only have one per franchise. So you can't have Mario Party 4, 5, 6, and 7 all on your top 10 list. You got to pick the one that you think kind of represents.
Though we wouldn't blame you.
And the way that I like to look at this list personally is you bought a GameCube. These are my 10 games that I think you should get. That's how I kind of look at it when I'm making my personal list.
Yeah, when I'm doing mine, I'm not saying these are the top 10 or anything because, once we put some restrictions on there, it's hard to say, like, this is the definitive top 10. It's just my thing on top of what you said. Usually I try to mix up a little bit of variety as well so you can get maybe the racer and the sports game and the whatever, like, if it lends itself to the list. I'm not just going to cram a certain genre in there.
Or a sports game.
But if there's wiggle room for a different maybe type of action game or something like that, then I'll weave it in there if it makes sense. But for the most part, it's 10 most recommended games. If you just came to me and said, "Hey, I've just got this GameCube thing. Well, what do I buy?" So.
And the way that we determine our ranking is our number 10 is worth 1 point, and our number 1 is worth 10 points. So we're going to go through our list, everything in between, add up the tallies of all the points. I don't know. We probably won't have any tiebreakers that we'll need to break unless we have to knock something off the list. Then we'll determine how to do that when we get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. Usually we have 3 people, and we're able to break tiebreakers pretty easily. But
sometimes it's about a half and half at this point.
Yeah, possibly. So with that said, I guess we can get right into it. I think that's all the rules, right? Something like that?
For the most part, yeah.
If there's more, we'll just tell you as we go. So I'll start off. My number 10, very controversial. Here we go. Already. The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
Okay.
So I put Wind Waker on here. There's multiple Zelda games on this console that I actually like. I think Twilight Princess is a fine game. I think Wind Waker is a fine game. And I think Four Swords Adventures is also a fine game. But when I think GameCube and I have to recommend one of these, I've got to go with Wind Waker. It stands the test of time way better. Graphically, it looks better nowadays than at least Twilight Princess. And this one is interesting because it went for this scope instead of, like, it had less dungeons than other Zelda games, but there was a lot more going on in the world. It's a much more relatable Zelda story than just this princess that gets kind of, it has a lot of personality. It has a lot of interesting characters. Like I said, the art style is phenomenal. And I think that if you have a GameCube and you have to own a Zelda game, I think Wind Waker is probably the one that you should go with. As for why it's so low on my list, because I feel like a lot of people would probably have it even at number 1, like very high up there. Wind Waker, personally, not my favorite Zelda. I appreciate it. I like it, but it's not my favorite Zelda, and I actually really like the GameCube. And doing this list, I realized how much I like the GameCube. And there's just a lot of games that if I were to recommend to people, like 5, 6 GameCube games, Wind Waker wouldn't be one of those. Like, there's other games that I want to recommend more. But yeah, definitely needed to be on this list. So it hit my number 10 slot, giving it 1 point.
Usually when I do these lists, I like to give my system that we're talking about like a nickname or like an identity. Like, what is the system? I've said the Wii is the party game console. So forth. Trying to think of this one. This one, to me, is the weirdest Nintendo console yet, even including the Switch in the lineup, because a lot of these games, a few that I'll mention as well, they aimed high as far as technical aspects of the games that they were pumping out, or if it was something like some of these games on here that may not be Nintendo directly, some of the games that they were putting out at the time, just as graphically as impressive as maybe what was on the PC, even. But other consoles, like, it was a very close, like, kind of arms race going as far as, like, the graphical nature of some of these games and just, like, the technical aspects of it. Whereas I feel like now Nintendo's very obviously dialed it back. They're not pushing for 4K. They're not pushing for 60 frames per second. It's interesting, too, because
they have a lot of partnerships, a lot of third-party exclusives. Like, it's very interesting.
This is the strangest Nintendo of them all, I think. And that's what I think makes it so good for me, is because, you know, I'm the one who usually focuses in on, you know, how good does the game run, how good does it look, you know, stuff like that. So, just a weird kind of console. Number 10 for me, though, which I can pretty much throw all that out the window for what I'm starting off with, Pokemon Coliseum. I think the Pokemon Stadium games have always been super fun, but this one added a single-player mode to it, which kind of pushed it over the edge as far as putting it on my list, because obviously 10 through 15, whatever games you think of, is kind of highly contested. And the single-player aspect is kind of what nailed it to number 10 for me. This is what gave people an idea, a slight idea of what it would be like to play a Pokemon game on a console. So what people are doing right now with the Switch, at least as far as we're filming this, you know, there's word, are we going to get like a full Pokemon RPG on the console on the Switch? You know, this kind of traces itself back all the way to Coliseum in some regards. I also really liked how well the Game Boy Advance worked. With this, it's pretty seamless as far as like getting your actual data into the game itself. That's always the big selling point of these games, is using your actual Pokemon that you've caught and raised, and use them in a game like this and see them on the big screen fighting it out. So number 10.
Interesting. Number 9 for me, something that I think you'll appreciate, is on my list, and that is going to be F-Zero GX. Very good racing game, probably the best F-Zero game, honestly. Out of all of them, the sense of speed you get in this game is kind of unlike any other game. Some games now, have, like current day, have kind of stepped up to kind of take on that mantle, because there hasn't been one in so long. But man, this was a really good F-Zero game, honestly. The tracks are great. All the characters and stuff return. I think it's basically just the upgraded version of the N64 game, which is really all I could ask for out of a racing game. When you upgrade it, is don't ruin the game. and they didn't. They made it better, which is great. So maybe not my favorite racer on the console, maybe not, my favorite style of racing as far as racing games go, but I definitely think it's the best F-Zero game, and I think it needs to be on this list, absolutely, no question.
I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
One that you might appreciate.
Oh, look at that!
I would imagine little nods across the table. Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem. What got me pulled into this game first off is that this is still when I was Resident Evil fan number 1. So in a very small way, these games kind of feel like each other as far as just bare bones, and you're talking about like the camera system and like sort of the controls. So that's kind of what made me go, what is this? And this is, I won't call it the most spooky game ever by a long stretch, but this is kind of when I was more into survival horror and those types of games. So I naturally just kind of jumped right into it. What really put this one on the map for me, not only, like I said, did it feel enough like a Resident Evil for me to feel comfortable with it and easily be able to jump in and start playing it, but like you get access to so many different like people and time periods that you're jumping through. And I'm trying to keep this spoiler free. That's probably a small other little nugget that we should mention.
Yeah,
is that
whatever.
yeah. You bounce around between so many different little scenarios and time periods and people. The other big one, branching storylines make the, I'll say replayability, but just like
the game does have a lot of replay.
The game length is pretty gross as far as games of this time. Like you don't really think of sitting down for 20, 30, 40 hours with games like this. But it was pretty decently long, at least at the time. And the big thing, obviously the big selling point are the insanity effects, or sanity effects, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
those were just so awesome to witness. And those are I would spoil the story before I would spoil the actual sanity effect. There's so many mind-boggling things, and you're just not used to a game messing with you quite as much. Like even when you sit down and know, okay, this game's gonna, pull some fast ones on me. I know I'm gonna get pranked on here. It still just catches you off guard sometimes, especially with things that don't even happen in the game. They're just on the screen, or maybe just with technical aspects of the game, and you're just like, it's one of those where you're like smacking the TV. Is like something wrong with it? Like is something breaking, or or am I just crazy? Like it really just messed with you, and that was the coolest part of the game, is that it broke that fourth wall in a sense, and it just felt like you were really just getting pestered with, and it was awesome. It was an awesome feeling once you finish. You're like, okay, I want games to, I want that diversion or that separation between me and my game now, so I can comfortably.
It's a really good medium to do that with too. With horror.
Yeah,
it's a great one to be the one to kind of break the fourth wall type thing.
So I appreciated it for what it did, for sure. So
I appreciate that answer. I don't know if you'll appreciate this answer, because my number 8 is Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Mm-hmm.
Super Smash Bros. Melee, I think, similar to a lot of games, I think this series does get better. And I know a lot of people swear by Melee, mainly fighting game community people swear by Melee. It's a technical thing.
They would be the loudest. Yeah,
but as just a game, overall, I think Melee is a fantastic party game that you can play. I think it has great characters. It's got a lot of fun. It's fun unlocking all the characters and seeing who's coming next and all of that stuff. The Smash controller is the best controller to play, the GameCube controller. I might as well call it the Smash controller. The GameCube controller is the best controller to play Smash Brothers with, just period.
Yeah, this was the first instance of plugging in the GameCube controller, using it, and just being like, whoa, this thing's kind of perfect for this.
Yeah, it feels like it was designed for it, especially with the C-Stick doing all the charge moves and everything. It's just perfect. The roster was still manageable without feeling like almost overwhelming as it gets in the future. They had a lot of really cool ones that I don't think people kind of like. Mewtwo, I remember the coolest thing ever when I unlocked Mewtwo in that game. It has tons of the iconic stages. Like, almost if you've played any other Smash Brothers, like from the future, there's so much of Melee in it that you'll be right at home and kind of interested in picking this up. But yeah, like I said, I don't think it's as good as a lot of people make it out to be. But it's still absolutely a top 10 GameCube game, no questions asked. So my number 8, Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Here's our first agreement, or our first repetition. F-Zero GX.
Really?
I'll kind of echo your remarks about the great sense of speed. That was really, and like I said, this is the technical Nintendo machine. Like, they were really trying to push boundaries on a lot of these games, and I feel like F-Zero was one of those. The level design was really awesome, and the mechanics worked well for it. The visuals and the sound. This might be my favorite soundtrack of the F-Zero games. I'm not sure. I might have to get back to you on that one, but I might like the SNES one more. But I will agree and say it's at least arguably, if not definitively, the best F-Zero game. And my last little note that I made for myself was, where the hell is this franchise? Because it's been 14 years, I think, at this point. So it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It feels like a very fun mobile game to have on a Switch. So where's it at? But yeah, I love F-Zero so much, and this is one of, if not the best one. So number 8.
Interesting. Way lower than I thought you were going to have it. I know you're an F-Zero fan.
Yeah, I am, and I don't know. This system has a lot of good games.
This system has really good games.
Yeah.
Just an aside, we were talking to some other people about working on this list, like having another person on it, and people didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And then you go and you look up the list of games, not just the first party, but the third party games that all came, like the Splinter Cells and all the stuff that showed up on this console. What a great console.
Even with the restrictions that we put on it, there's probably a good argument for 20 to maybe 30, 20 to 25 games.
Oh, yeah.
That you could put on this type of list. So
My number 7,
Mm-hmm.
another controversial one, and I feel like that's going to happen more and more as we go back to the past, and we have some nostalgic feelings for a lot of these games. Number 7, Metroid Prime.
Mm-hmm.
Metroid Prime, bringing a series that I enjoy quite a bit, the side-scrolling Metroid series, Metroidvania. Coined that term. Don't know if you know that. Basically, discovering powers in one area, using them in another to progress in this giant open world. This gets revealed. People not happy. First person, like an action-y game, this is not what people signed up for. And then it comes out, people are like, oh, it's just better than the side-scrolling ones. They're able to incorporate all the first-person stuff in a not like gimmicky way. It worked really well. The rolling around and exploring wasn't lost, which I think is the most important part. But it kind of improved the combat. So they kept the exploring just as good, and then they got to add all these cool combat things to the gameplay on top of that. So lots of people love this game. Really, really like this game. Another one that a lot of people might put at number 1. For me, got it at number 7. Metroid.
Yeah,
Prime.
there's a lot of people that could put it number 1 and just not on a GameCube list. There's a lot of people who swear by this game, for sure.
I know.
My number 7, Mario Party 4. I'm a huge Mario Party fan. If we're talking about maybe the first 6, at least 5 and before. Since then, not so much. I mean, I'll play them just because I
you don't
really
like being in a car with everybody else.
No. I'll play them because I just really want a Mario Party game, and I feel like it is like the staple game of each console, or one of the staple games. Even though
Nintendo doesn't
the effort, the effort's just never there for whatever reason too. When we're doing this sort of process, just going back, it's interesting to look at Metacritic and stuff like that. Mario Party games are never highly reviewed, like at all.
Really?
They're always in like 70s and below.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, and I'm not really sure what the disconnect is, or like what people are wanting on their list when they're saying, okay, here's my ideal 10 for Mario Party. Now let's play it and see. That's just kind of interesting. I don't know. But for me, like I wouldn't say any of them are below like a 60 something, and that's just including the newest one. But anyways, Mario Party 4. The big thing for me is that it was such a huge enhancement over the N64 ones. This is the first one that came out on the GameCube, so it was nice to finally have that like leap in technology. I wrote down minigame collection because I think this game 4 has got the best overall lineup of minigames. I just literally just put Slime Time, Avalanche, Book Squirm, Paratrooper Plunge, Toad's Quick Draw, Photo Finish, Mr. Blizzard's Brigade, Making Waves, Hide and Go Boom, Goal, Reverse a Bomb, Right or Left, Order Up, Chain Chomp Fever, Paths of Peril, Bowser's Bigger Blast, Panels of Doom, and that's just
I remember some of those.
Those are so good. And this was also one of the last times that they made DK one of the playable characters. So this was one of his send-off games.
I forgot about that. Yeah, they did stop doing that.
Yeah.
Huh?
So this was the first time they had Waluigi, I think, and Daisy. Daisy.
Definitely.
And one of the last times they had DK. So this was his epic send-off game before they
I forgot about that.
Just made him an NPC. So. So good though. Like I could play every single one of those mini games, like, and just be happy. Great game.
I like that answer. My next one, number 6, Super Mario Sunshine. I think Super Mario Sunshine is a really, really good Mario game, a great 3D platforming Mario game, as long as you don't try to 100% it. The story of start to finish with the game is really, really good. It's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. They expand on 64 positively in a lot of ways. They do take a couple steps back from 64, but the thing that they do so well that makes it so fun is the movement. The ability to control Mario is with the GameCube controller, this great controller that I love so much. The analog control that Mario has, adding on top of that the FLUDD, which is like your book bag jetpack thing that you can use to launch yourself in the air. You can slide with it. You can kind of float around and get higher. higher up on these platforms, and they added the like wall slide, which has been, I believe, in every single Mario game since then, where if you jump at a wall, you slide down it so that you can do your little wall jumps and stuff. Whereas 64, one of the issues with that game is sometimes you do like the wall thing that you wanted to do, and sometimes you just hit your head and went and then launched backwards, and it didn't work. But yeah, just for the pure control over Mario, and even the level designs are really, really good. They change every mission that you're doing, which is an interesting take on it. I know some people don't like that. I don't mind that. We have 64 for the other thing, and then we have this variation of it, and I think that's great. And then we have Odyssey as another variation on the formula. But I think Sunshine's in an interesting spot because some people really love it, swear by it. Some people absolutely hate it. Yeah. And I'm not in the love it, oh my gosh category, but I'm much higher up there, and I'm a little confused by the hate it people because, like, sure, if you get all the blue coins and stuff, yeah, you'll want to kill yourself. But if you're just collecting the shines, and, like, there's really cool stuff, like the game brightens up every shine that you get, so the screen actually physically gets brighter as you go through the game and collect all the stuff. Like, there's a lot of cool things that they do. Yeah. And on top of that, it's a little bit like Mario Bros. 2. Where there's a lot of like characters and things in the game that are really neat that you don't see again. You know, like the village of the people, the big fat people, I forget what they're called, but the big fat people in the village that make their no noises and stuff. We don't really see them and there's a lot of that. They have tropical versions of a lot of the enemies from Mario. Like the Goombas and stuff, they look different. The turtles look different. And you don't really see that anymore. So it's got kind of that like Black Sheep Mario 2 thing going for it. But Mario Sunshine, like the game a lot.
I figured you'd mention it.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of ideas from that game stuck around through the
future iterations.
Yeah. Number 6, speaking of Mario, Super Smash Bros. Melee. On top of what you said, I think the game added a lot of amazing characters. Bowser, I think these are all first-timers. A lot of these were, at least. Bowser, Sheik, Falco, Mewtwo, Ice Climbers, Marth, and...
I'm glad you made a list.
Roy.
See, I didn't prepare this much in advance. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I don't know. This was the first breakout list on top of just the classic people where I was just like, oh my god. Like
the first game only had like... 12 people, I think, total?
It felt like they added more franchises in this one than they have until, we're getting like 60, 70 character list at least. But at the time, it was just like, oh my god, like Fire Emblem? What are they doing? And all these other...
Yeah, I didn't know what half the games were, to be dead honest.
That's fair.
And like, I knew, like, I learned about Earthbound from Smash Brothers. I knew Ice Climber. I knew like the more retro ones. Yeah. But yeah, like Fire Emblem, I didn't know that. I was just like, I'll play this guy that I can hit B and he charges his attack.
Oh yeah. He was a welcome addition to that game for sure. I like it because it feels noticeably different from the other Smash Brothers games, and it's got a lot of the technical fighting aspects that they either just nuked completely or kind of neutered through other games, because it felt like they did a little bit of apologizing or just like, oops, we didn't mean for this to be the way it is afterwards. And ever since then, they really make it adamant that they are not making a fighting game. They're just making a fun party game with all your favorite people sort of things. They had air dodging, wave dashing, edge guarding. The speed was just so much faster in this game.
Yeah, the speed was really... It's almost... Some characters, I think, are almost too fast.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to keep track of them.
Yeah, especially if you watch, like, professional Smash Melee players. It's just, like... It feels like they're on fast forward, and you're just like, I just missed everything that happened. And...
because they're, like, dash canceling everywhere.
Yeah. And... Combos were another big thing with this game. I'm sure everyone on the internet's seen the Wombo Combo video, and that has everything to do with it being Melee and just being that sort of game where you can piece together combos, which, all of these terms that I'm throwing out just make it sound like, man, are you playing Tekken or something? It's like, nope, Smash Brothers Melee.
This party game that Nintendo just used to advertise other games.
But yeah, for those reasons, because like I said, I like fighting games a lot, so this one felt more like a pure fighting game, on top of adding some of these other characters that I mentioned. So it was really cool. I like it.
Sticking with Mario Kart Double Dash. I think arguably the best Mario Kart. It has a lot of really good courses. The graphics on it still, I think, hold up today really well. Especially because we hadn't really had that HD Mario Kart until the Switch Wii U came along. So it's been a while, but the fact that you were able to pick two characters was really novel and cool. The Switch mechanic was neat, throwing having one person kind of as attack and one person driving. It had Baby Park, which is one of the better Mario Kart levels. I just the cups were really good. Like I think this is probably my second favorite Mario Kart overall.
Nice.
And I think if you get a GameCube and 4 controllers, like you got to get Mario Kart. Like it's such a good Mario Kart. So Double Dash. Lots of controversial, like people I feel like because they were taking risks with this console, people are very hit or miss on a lot of the games for it, unfortunately. And maybe that's what gives it kind of its, I don't want to do that list, bad rap type thing.
I feel like,
I'm more in the camp of they did a really good job with their decisions for it.
I feel like it might be one of the most polarizing Nintendo systems. That or maybe Wii U, but Wii U just feels like people are just
is that
like
polarizing?
I think
most people agree that they don't like it.
Yeah, they're just angry basically at the decision to make Wii U. But yeah, this one, I've heard a lot of people say, I've never had a GameCube, or oh yeah, I had GameCube, and then they make a list like this or something like that. I haven't seen too many in betweens like, yeah, I think I had one or something like that. I feel like people kind of stuck to it or didn't.
But yeah, Double Dash, very very.
Have you ever played the arcade version basically of that?
No. I have not.
I think it's much newer than the game at least, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Number 5, Beautiful Joe. Ooh. I'd say this is one of the most satisfying games of that time, at least, to play. The controls, which, like I said, you look at this controller and you're like, what do I do with this thing? The controls felt amazing for it. The powers are great. I love me a good beat-em-up game, and this was right up my alley. And it was like beat 'em ups like cranked to 11 basically. It was basically like kung fu, anime, and like manga mixed together on screen. It was really cool, and it felt really unique, especially now. I mean, there's really not too many games like it since then either. It was also what I appreciated. It was super challenging and like the good kind. I don't like games that just kick my ass for no reason, basically. But it was like the good kind, like the Dark Souls kind, where it feels like, you're getting better, where you mess up and you die, you're like, oh, I can do better, sort of thing. So it pushed you, and it was just very satisfying to pull off some of the moves, to complete some of these challenges and stuff like that. So it was just the art style, the comic book kind of in-your-face kung fu sort of art style just really pushed it over the edge for me. And anytime I think of GameCube, Beautiful Joe rockets up the list. And yeah, I'm waiting for him to show up maybe in a Smash game. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the Capcom games. They did a whole bunch of games for them, and that was a really good one that people really liked.
Yeah, that was what was one of like the 3. I forget what the term was, but there were a handful of games that they made, like the big 3 or big 4 or something like that.
5, I think.
5, okay.
But only like 3 of them came out.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. Geez, it's killing me that I can't think of it. But anyway, number 4, Soul Calibur 2. What an amazing actual fighting game this is. Just so fluid. To this day, it is still better than the other Soul Calibur games with how fluid and everything.
By a wide margin.
This one introduced Link as their, character, their console exclusive character. And, oh my gosh, Link was so much fun to play.
Yeah.
So unfair. He was so good. But it's funny because whenever I talk to most people, casual, of like, oh yeah, Soul Calibur 2, they might bring it up. They always know the Link. They're like, oh, that's the one that had Link in it, right? Like that is such a staying point. But music, the voice, like that announcer that chimes in, like it really set what I think a Soul Calibur game should be. And then I feel like they started trying other stuff, and it wasn't working. And now it feels like with the most recent release, it's going back to the roots. It feels like it's really taking its inspiration from this game because it was so well done.
I do the same thing every time Soul Calibur 6 news or headline pops up. I just start thinking about 2. I'm just like, man, if they do it it, sort of thing.
It's so good. And like, not to talk too much about it, but like I played this in an arcade fairly recently, and boy, it holds up so well as just a fighting game mechanically. It's so strong, animation so strong. Like I said, this console, I think, as far as like standard definition consoles, this one looks so good. Like it's incredible. So yeah, Soul Calibur 2.
Number 4,
getting up there.
Resident Evil 4. This one I don't have to make any notes about. I can just kind of go off the cuff. One of the most bittersweet games for me, and the bitter half of it is what came after, the 5, the 6, whatever, since 7, turned it back around, but they kind of ditched 4's formula. But sweet in the fact that this like revolutionized the franchise. It like gave it like that kick in the butt sort of thing, and like put it right back on top. There's nothing wrong with 1, 2, or 3, but it felt like the hype just kind of died down, and then they kicked it into a new gear with number 4, and just I feel like anyone who's touched a GameCube has played Resident Evil 4. Like everyone knows this game for this system. Obviously, it's come out since then on other consoles. There's been HD versions, so
Director
forth.
said he would cut his own head off if it ever came to another console.
Still alive to this day. So he's living under a rock in ignorance, I guess. But no, there's so much to say about this game, but just everything from the very beginning, from Leon being one of, if not my favorite people, just the setting of it was so cool and so like this game, it's not terrifying and it's not jump scare, it's just creepy. Obviously with the different languages being spoken and stuff sprouting out from people's heads, and just that constant, like, it always feels like you're in a dark village, and it always kind of feels like someone's creeping up behind you, sort of thing. So it's just very offsetting. It's very good. Like, the controls are awesome. The tank controls are back, but obviously in a different way. The camera's just mounted behind you instead of the static sort of angled cameras that you're used to. The mission's pretty cool. Some of the characters that you meet along the way are awesome. But yeah, just everything. Everyone knows the stranger, the guy the merchant in the game that you're buying stuff from. There's just so many classic things that come from this game. So many scenarios and boss fights and situations that you run into. It's just like basically from start to end. From start to end. There's just so many memorable things about this game, and I feel like if you are fine with the spookiness and creepiness of the game, like, you have to have played this at some point.
It's definitely a must-play, just not for GameCube, just it's a must-play for, I think, anybody who's serious about gaming.
This is another one of the ones that we'll mention, at least on our list, that, you will see this not only on GameCube lists, you'll see it on top games of all time lists. Like, this is up there as far as just, masterpieces of gaming. So, yep, number 4 for me.
Number 3. Let me take you back to a simpler time.
Okay.
Little Kevin wakes up, turns on his console, and goes through the world of Animal Crossing. Oh boy, number 3, Animal Crossing. What a time waster! What a gem to waste my time with. Very similar to The Sims or anything like it. It is a game that never ends. It's a game you can keep investing into, and you keep getting more out of until you cheat, which I'll talk about in a minute. But you're given, hey, you have to pay this, amount of money for your house. Oh, okay. So you're picking shells, you're doing whatever it is, you're meeting the people who live in your town, and you sell them to the store, you pay off that rent, then your house gets bigger and you have another debt to pay, and that's the cycle of life. That's the loop that keeps going. But just the fact that your town people remember everything that's happened. They know your birthday. They know the holidays. They'll send you letters. If you don't send them letters back, they'll be mad at you and won't talk to you. If you stop playing the game for a week and then you turn it on, they make you feel really guilty that you haven't checked in. Your town's going to get overrun with weeds. They have really cool things where you can put in other people's memory cards and visit their towns. And, just a really, really cool, simple game that it's not a challenge, but it is very rewarding. You set your own goals. you know, today I'm going to pay off, I don't really know the money ratio, but like 2,000 bells. I'm going to get 2,000 bells worth of fish or whatever. And you go fishing for that day, you talk to some people, and you sell it. And it's just a very satisfying Zen sim style game. And then there's the aspect of it where on Christmas you get gifts and there's actual events programmed into the game. The seasons change with the actual seasons. You know, it could be raining one day or whatever it is. And there's a lot of little secrets that now you can look them up, but it was really cool. Like KK Slider plays a concert for you and it plays the credits to the game if you go talk to him, but I think it's only Fridays at like 8 o'clock you have to be there. That's when the concert's live. Like, there's just so many cool things about this game. Definitely worth playing. Absolutely. The music's great. I love the characters in the world. It's got that dialogue stuff. The only annoying part of the game is if you shut it off and you don't save, Mr. Rossetti comes to talk to you, and he talks to you for a solid 10 minutes and scolds you for shutting off your game without saving because they assumed you messed something up and you're trying to like cover it up. Can't do that in this game, though. They're on to you. But man, what a gem.
Very lived in, like inhabited. Feels like a real.
Oh yeah, and like not even to mention you're buying clothes.
Yeah.
You're buying furniture. You're decorating your house. Your house gets another story. You get to decorate that. You get wallpaper and floors and all this stuff. You can get NES games, which is my favorite thing to collect. I actually haven't done it. Maybe I'll do a video of it sometime. I kind of want to go to my old town. Just load it up, record, go to my old town and see what's up and see what it looks like. That might be fun. But anyway, yeah, Animal Crossing. So good, so good.
My biggest thing with those types of games, and you mentioned Sims and everything else, is once you hit that point of self-realization and you're looking over, you're like, I've got actual bills piling up. I've got, other stuff. You're
That's
just
why
like,
I took you back to a simpler time.
Yeah.
That's why I started out like that.
Number 3, Metroid Prime. One of the last times that Nintendo really just pushed the boundaries, like I said, for the system, just in general, but this one for sure was their big haymaker as far as tech and creativity goes, like simultaneously, I think. On top of what you've already said, I think the controls were basically perfect on it. You can tell that, they spent their time with it. The controller was probably just made for this game, and a couple other ones. It just felt right at home, and it felt like it was just custom made for this game. And I'd say on top of it being a good first-person shooter, it was an intelligent one too. A lot of the puzzles really cool in the game, and just as you'd expect with any Metroid labeled game, the atmosphere was awesome in it, and it was just cool. I'm not the craziest fan over the side-scrolling Metroids, but I was all about some first-person Metroid. So I like the switch over to first-person at this point in time.
I thought you were just saying you like the Switch. I was like, that's not what we're talking about.
Brief aside. No. I liked the Switch. I don't remember what my reaction was way back when I realized, hey, like this game that I've been, kind of lukewarm on before is finally switching to something that I can, be a little bit more comfortable with. I don't remember being like, oh my God, it's hard to remember what receiving news was like when you didn't have like your phone buzzing and telling you. So it was, like you said, a simpler time, but I can imagine that I was pretty stoked to hear that it switched over to first person. But yeah, solid game. And I'm hoping that, when, 4 coming out, that they're looking at that one and go, what did people love so much about this game? And they made a list and they said, let's make this game, except on the Switch. So one can hope. But yeah, number 3, Metroid Prime.
Yeah, I actually remember, because every once in a while when I'm eating or something, I'll put on like some old video review or something of old games just to check it out. And I remember the Metroid ones, talking about like the launch of that game, just because they were comparing the graphics to like PC. And so they're like, this is the best looking game ever.
Yeah, Half-Life was out.
It's unbelievable.
Half-Life was out when this game came out, and people were just like, I could see, either one. It's just like, that's crazy. And a Nintendo system was rivaling a PC at that time.
Number 2, Resident Evil 4. Everything you said, Resident Evil 4, the death of one style of gameplay for the rise of another, and an influence that's still being felt today. The merchant, so many iconic things about this particular game, but on top of that, just going back and playing it, there's so many smart decisions and things that they made. Just like, how do you we'll make the main character more powerful. Well, how do we make them still be scared? Like the things have to be a threat. Well, you can't shoot while you're running. Well, you can't, like, they came up, you have this very precise aiming, and it opened up the door for things like shooting people in the hand to make them drop their weapons, shooting one arm and then shooting their other arm, which gives them like the silly momentum spin to knock them down, shooting them in the leg to trip them up, enemies that have exposed weak points. All this stuff, it really was the first one to do all of this well. On top of that, the AI in the game for its time, very smart, very smart AI. You could do all this stuff like barricade yourself in a house. You could push furniture up against the windows to buy yourself more time, and it would actually buy yourself more time. It's not some like scripted thing. Like the enemies would take longer to get to you. The inventory management's my personal favorite thing in the game. Your inventory is a grid, and every weapon takes up a certain number of grid space, and you actually have to organize it. Sometimes you might need to get rid of something or combine some things to make sure that they all fit into your inventory. I think that, the scare factor comes in the atmosphere of where you are. And also, just like the civilians, the fact that they call out to you when they see you can be scary because you don't see them and you hear, or whatever. And you're like, they're coming for me. Where is it coming from? But they make you feel empowered, but also make you feel defenseless by forcing you to not be able to move when you use your knife and things like that, as well as not give you that much ammo, which is the classic way to do it. But this game I think is still to this day really, really good. It was the first one to do quick time events that I think weren't obnoxious. I think it was like, okay, this is the end of the line for the QuickTime events not being obnoxious. Like this
it kept you on your toes too. Like it mixed it up, so it wasn't always just spam A and I died.
Right, like you do something and you die, and then it starts over and it's a different button this time. Like you do need to pay attention, but it worked in this game because it was between these checkpoints and these save points that it added attention to the cutscenes and stuff. It had the goofy charm that some Resident Evil stuff has, like. It had just enough of it, though. Just enough of that, like, 90s silliness in it to not be annoying. So, anyway, I really, really, really like this game. I talk about this game a lot. But Resident Evil 4, number 2, very much holds that spot for me.
Number 2, aptly named, Soul Calibur 2. It's so hard to say. My favorite... fighter of all time. It's so good. You mentioned so many good things. Like I feel like every character deserves its spot in the game. All of them play so well.
The depth of the ranges on their attacks and stuff.
It doesn't feel... I feel like I've played at least, 30, 40, 50 matches with each person. I obviously have my favorites. You always pick a favorite in a fighting game and kind of play the most with, who you like. But, I like them all. The music's so good. Like you said, the announcer, just anytime you just boot up the game and you just hear his repeated little lines, I just feel like anytime you mention Soul Calibur, it all comes back to Soul Calibur 2. Soul Edge was fine. Soul Calibur's fine. All these games are fine. 4 and Beyond started doing some weird stuff, and they just kind of, like, strayed off the path, it felt like. They kind of forgot what made the game good. And I'm hoping that 6 reins it back in. It kind of feels like it so far, but we'll see. 2 is just awesome. There's really not much else to say really on top of what you said. It's just so good.
I hate to keep bringing it up, but man, these games hold up so well.
Yeah,
like it's incredible.
Such a solid game, and it feels like there's not a lot of problems with fighting games right now. Is that it feels like it's either too bare bones or you're jam-packing all this like super and then meter and then like all this stuff in there, and it feels like too cluttered. Like what's all these meters and stuff do on the screen? What do all these buttons do? This one's just very simple. It didn't do too much, but it also had enough meat in there to satisfy different fight styles and different systems, and you could cleverly and intelligently beat someone. After they're beating you down, you can switch characters or you can fight them in a different sort of method. And all the stages were awesome. I don't know, just like I can't think of a negative, really, for this game. And obviously, like you mentioned, Link was on here throughout the years of guest characters. All the Darth Vaders, Heihachi was in there. It always feels like Link's probably the most memorable one as far as just who Link is, on top of like them actually fitting in the game and playing well. So he's probably the best guest character that they've
really
had.
Good.
Yeah,
he's really good. At
but yeah, number 2, for a reason, I'd say if you got any fighting game, like it's hands down Soul Calibur 2.
Yeah, Soul Calibur 2 is one of the best fighting games. Period.
Yeah.
If we did a top 10 fighting games list, which we might do in the future, Soul Calibur 2 would be
spoiler. It'll be there.
Number 1, we're here at last. My number 1, probably not very surprising, but it is Eternal Darkness, and I will go a little bit more in depth because it is my It is my personal favorite game on the system, and it is the game that I would easily recommend to anybody. It's the most unique thing that you can do with the console, and it doesn't feel like Wii gimmick unique. Like it works, and it's very cool. So you play in what was present day. It's like 2000, I think. And you're going through this mansion very similar to a Resident Evil mansion, and you're basically finding pages of this tome, and you read them, and they take you back to the past of when that takes place. And you're going back 2,000 years and playing these characters and learning about kind of what happened to them. And then they learn stuff in their chapter, and then when it finishes and you're back to present day, you use that new knowledge to sort of Metroidvania the mansion that you're in, which is just really, really neat. You're going through dozens. There's like 20 playable characters in this game. You're going through a whole bunch.
There's a whole bunch.
Yeah. You're going through a whole bunch of them, learning all these new things. There's a magic system in it that's very interesting because it's one of those where you can find spells that are important, but there's dozens of really well hidden ones that you can find, and like you can just mess around with the runes that you find and make your own spells, and they'll work, but you might not know what they do unless you found like the scroll that tells you what they do, which is interesting, but they still work, and they all have this alignment. There's this player choice that you were talking about where in the very beginning of the game you're actually choosing who the final boss of the game is. The final boss changes depending on your choices in the game, and all of the enemies in the game's kind of behavior changes depending on some choices that you make. Really, really cool. The combat system's interesting. It has a targeting system similar to Resident Evil 4, but this is like more like classic Resident Evil camera, where you hold down a trigger and then you can aim at their head or their arms. So maybe you want to cut off their arms because then they won't be a threat to you anymore. They can't hurt you. But if you cut off their head, they'll stop draining your sanity, which causes the sanity effects, which I'll talk about in a minute. So you have this kind of choice to make, and you might want to, depending on if you have high health, low sanity, or high sanity, low health, you might want to make some different decisions. And there's so many characters, they all have different weapons and stuff. It's really cool. With that being said, the highlight of the game is the sanity effects. There is so many of these in the game, and they all do different things, but they just mess with you. They break the fourth wall. They do all sorts of different things. I'm going to spoil a couple of them, but they are great. One of them, because I actually played through this game with some people earlier, one of them ends the game on the spot.
Yeah.
And it says, "Thank you for playing the demo of Eternal Darkness," and it just goes back to the main menu, and they're like, "What?" And then the game flashes and it like resets to where you were. That one's really good. There's one where some bugs actually appear on the screen, and I was playing. Interestingly, we used to go on road trips, and I'd bring a little CRT TV in the back of the car, and I'd lay down in the back seat and play games. I played Smash or whatever it is, and I was playing Eternal Darkness, and the bugs crawled on the screen, and I actually slapped the screen. Totally got me. That was a good one. Your controller can disconnect. There's tons and tons of things that can happen, and they're all so smart. Some of them are goofy. Some of them are like your heart will drop. Some of them you'll be onto and be like, oh, okay. Not all of them work with current day hardware, but it doesn't matter. They're so special, so unique, and it's still the only place you can play this game. I highly recommend it to anybody who either, if you like survival horror, you have to play it. If you like unique game ideas like that, you have to play it. And it's not like jump scare scary. It's not that bad.
No.
So you can definitely get through it. But what a great game. Also, I want to give a shout out to the voice acting in it. It's probably, that I can think of just off the top, it's one of the best voice acted games of that time period. It's really, really well done. And I don't think it gets enough credit for that. So Eternal Darkness, number 1, easy for me.
in a rare turn of events, number 1, The Legend of Zelda,
Interesting.
The Wind Waker.
I'm glad you did that because I felt really bad putting it at 10.
I will start off this by saying, once again, if you've viewed any of these Nintendo or listened to any of our Nintendo chats, I will remind viewers at home that I'm very much not a Zelda fan for the most part, if you're talking about entire catalog of games. But if we're talking about Wind Waker, I'm there. I'm totally there. Number 1, the biggest, brightest spot of the game for me is Toon Link. Above and beyond everything else, you'll hear me mention it in Smash games if we ever talk about those that have Toon Link in them. Toon Link is my boy. I think he's got an awesome personality in the game, which is something I don't get to say about Link very much in these games. I love that the game doesn't start you out as the hero. You're just a kid. You're not on the epic adventure yet of, saving the princess, saving the world, being number 1 awesome guy of all time. You're just a dude. You're a little boy. The game felt a lot more personable to me than the other Zelda games, especially with like the interconnectivity of the islands and all the characters, especially like Medley, Nico, Zunari. I'm sure you'll see a couple of those people popping up in your Hyrule Warriors, I think. Exploration was awesome in this game. I really loved, of course, sailing the high seas and stuff like that. Treasure hunting. It just felt more natural in this game. Getting out there and just searching just kind of felt like secondhand nature. Whereas some of the other games for me, it's just kind of, maybe even Breath of the Wild for a little bit of comparison, but like it just feels like you're just kind of forced into doing it because you're just out in this big open emptiness. But I don't know, it just felt more natural in the way that they presented it. I feel like the characters like actually had motivations and emotions and stories, unlike some of the other Zelda games of the past. I will admit that the dungeons weren't exactly the highlight of the game. I don't think it was that big of their focus. But they were still fun. I like the dungeons. And of course,
they're interesting. They weren't like the generic dungeons that all the Zelda games have, where it's like this is the forest one.
And of course, the most important thing to any Zelda person in the world is that they had so many nods to Ocarina of Time in the game. So, for all of the nostalgia that this game and this series want you to feel, it very much said, we know you've played Ocarina of Time, and we're going to reference it quite a bit. But just art style alone and everything you already mentioned on top of what I just said, just number 1, easy for me.
Interesting. I was trying to figure out what your number 1 was going to be, and I knew you liked Wind Waker.
Oh yeah,
but I didn't expect that. So that's good because you covered me. I had Wind Waker on my list, and up to the last minute I was changing a couple things in that last 2 spots, and I felt bad putting Wind Waker as low as I did because I know people do love it. It's just not my favorite, so I'm glad you came in to pick up the pace. That's good.
Yeah, your turn to get some Nintendo hate, even though I didn't mention Sunshine, I guess. But yeah, I'm all about some Wind Waker. But talk about any of the other Zelda games that aren't called Okami, and you miss me. But yeah, number 1, super easy, I think.
All right, I screwed something up. Surprise, surprise.
Math, not your forte.
It's not math, it's handwriting. It looks like a 3.
Ooh,
it's
also.
Actually an 8.
So yeah, usually what we do is we combine our scores and we can get like our official Press X recommendation. Obviously, you know what his top 10 is, what my top 10 is, if you were to ask us separately, but we like to have a unofficial official.
Yeah, so we have some tiebreakers to break. They don't matter too much, meaning it was a fairly clean break to a top 10. It wasn't exactly clean, but the final 10 games, and here we go. Wow, I can make the Nintendo people hate you. The number 10 slot's either going to be F-Zero GX or Super Mario Sunshine. Now, I preemptively put F-Zero GX ahead of it because it was on both of our lists as my
I think there's that, and I think if you asked Group F-Zero.
Just for the record, I'm actually pissed that it is not in our top 10 list. I'm quite furious, but by the way we break tiebreakers, F-Zero would win.
I think if you asked F-Zero groupies, hey, is GX the best one or up there? They'd say yeah. And like you mentioned with Sunshine, if you asked Mario fan base, where would you put Sunshine? Sounds like they put it somewhere in the middle, something like that. So it sucks, but
so now the rest of these are just ties. That it's just they were on both of our lists or one of our lists. Yeah. So I'll just bring them up. If we can break them, we can. It doesn't.
You can just say tied for 7th, I guess. If there's like 3.
Well, there's 2. So the next one is Double Dash versus Beautiful Joe.
Okay.
It doesn't matter too much to me. I personally would put Double Dash, of course, it was on my list, but it's mainly because it is that Mario exclusive type thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to write that down. Like I said, it doesn't matter too much.
Hey, Beautiful Joe made it, so that's all that matters.
Beat Mario Sunshine, so...
Easy. I will make that argument, for sure.
The next one is going to be Animal Crossing and Melee. Once again, Melee was on both of our lists, so I'm going to put that one up there. And then the next one is Wind Waker Metroid Prime, another one that was on both of our lists.
I'd say... Well, I was going to say Wind Waker because it got one of our number 1s, but it made a number 10 for the other person.
That's true.
Put Metroid Prime above it,
it's
I'd
really
say,
hard.
Because if you ask, once again, if you go to Metroid fan base, I feel like there's more people that would say, oh, Breath of the Wild's better than Wind Waker, than Metroid whatever is better than Prime.
And then for the top slots, it's Resident Evil 4 and Soul Calibur 2.
Is Soul Calibur going to be the best game on the system?
I mean, I would obviously pick Resident Evil.
Put 2 as number 2. I put Soul Calibur 2 as number 2, and you rated it lower than Resident Evil, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, Resident Evil was my number 2. That's why it's a tie.
Okay. Then yeah.
All right, that completes the list.
I'm okay with that.
So here we go. Honorable mention, Super Mario Sunshine. Number 10, F-Zero GX. Number 9, Beautiful Joe. Number 8, Mario Kart Double Dash. Number 7, Animal Crossing. Number 6, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Number 5, Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. Number 4, Metroid Prime. Number 3, Eternal Darkness. Number 2, Soul Calibur 2. And number 1, Resident Evil 4. What a list.
Yeah.
Just go out, buy the console, buy those games, buy 4 controllers, and have a field day.
Really, like 5 of these, absolutely for sure. I'd say 60%, something like that, of like video game reviewers and people in the industry would probably include 5 of those on their best games of all time.
Of all time list, yeah.
And we put quite a handful of restrictions on some of these.
Because there could have been multiple Zelda games and all this stuff going on.
But even so, you have your pick of the
we couldn't have remasters. To be honest, the Ocarina of Time and the Master Quest and that whole thing was released on there. Like, it could have got real messy.
Plenty of people swear by Resident Evil. Plenty of people swear by Soul Calibur.
Eternal Darkness is one of the biggest niche things I've ever seen in my life, where it has its fans and they are so it's so good. It's so good.
Metroid Prime's like a solid 97 or 98 on Metacritic.
Oh yeah,
it's up there with the greatest.
Lots of people's favorite game of all time. Some lists best games of all time. I see it there.
Wind Waker's highly loved. Super Smash Bros. Melee is still to this day the most popular Smash. So
ridiculous.
Like I said, this list of games is pretty epic. Actually, I didn't know what I was jumping into off the top of my head, because it's been a while since I've booted up my GameCube, but this is a really good system.
Oh yeah, for sure. And
probably my favorite Nintendo system now that I'm looking at it. I just really love how they pushed tech, visuals on top of, hey, we got really good games.
Really good games, really good third-party partnerships, really good exclusives for their time. Almost all of them have kind of moved away from that now. But great exclusives for their times, must-have, must-play games. And for me, I love the controller so much. It is Nintendo getting a controller right, which is very rare, especially moving forward from this point.
And it was an easy system to find and pick up. It wasn't like super rare and sold out everywhere. It wasn't super expensive.
Yeah.
The accessories were reasonable.
It's a tank. You could drop it and it would be okay.
Yeah, you can fuse it with your lunchbox. It's
literally just a cube.
Yeah, like all these great visuals just came from half a disc. Like, it's so amazing what they did with this thing. And the color options were sweet. I really love that purple to death.
Oh, the indigo. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also went indigo.
I don't know. Just so many good things about this system. It kind of makes me like the Switch even less.
Oh, boy.
I wish they would get back to this, like, hey, we can do technology and we can push the boundaries on stuff again. Like, we can go back to where we were. We don't just have to be cute. And we don't just have to make motion controls or...
To be fair, right now, they're closer to that than they've ever been in the past long time.
Obviously, I'm not a business person because they're killing it right now for Switch. But, I wish they would look at some of these games again. And I hope, like I said with Metroid Prime, let's focus on visual. Let's get that 1080p. Let's get that 60 frame, whatever they need to get to at that benchmark. And, with some of these other games, let's make sure we get Soul Calibur 6 when it comes out. Let's make sure we get some of these other... Let's finally make the sequel to Eternal Darkness.
Shadow of the Eternals. Where are you?
And obviously Smash is going to be on there. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of these games and franchises are still around for sure. Where's my beautiful Joe at? Where's my F-Zero at? It's been 14 years. This system's just really sweet. And
I can't actually say enough nice things about it.
Like I said towards the beginning.
And it's a good party system on top of that.
Yeah,
which
like
is
I said
awesome.
towards the beginning too, you could easily take about 20 to 25 games and throw them on this list and it'd be just as legit as ours.
Like
so.
Sunshine.
Oh, well.
All right, so that is our top 10 GameCube list. Please leave your top 10 GameCube list down below. I'd be curious to read them because as we start moving into the past with these systems, you start getting all these nostalgic answers, and I actually kind of like that and hearing why people like certain games because I've found and played a lot of games that people recommended nostalgically like that, and I've liked a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you can find a lot of gems that way. So.
And backwards compatibility or whatever you want to call it on whichever system you're playing and emulators and all that, like these games are still around. You can still play most, if not all of these. So,
but like I said, leave your list down below. We'll check them out and comment on them and see if there's any games that we don't know about. But thank you for being here, Nick.
For sure.
And thank you guys so much for watching. We will speak with you next time.